Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 84. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Saturday, Steelers Nation. And there's a snowstorm coming into Pittsburgh on Sunday, and that might be fitting for the reaction for why we're doing a Saturday episode, Dave, because the Pittsburgh Steelers have a new head coach, an old name, you could say. It'll be Mike McCarthy, succeeding Mike Tomlin as the Pittsburgh Steelers' 17th head coach in franchise history. That news reported right before 2 o'clock, about 1:30 on Saturday afternoon. The team officially announcing, as of this recording, they verbally agreed to a deal with Mike McCarthy. Jerry Dulac reporting it's going to be a 5-year contract, which is standard for first-hire coaches in the sense of their first hire by their new team. So a lot going on here, Dave. Welcome back. How you doing?
Happy Saturday. Am I supposed to sing Gloom, Despair, and Agony right here?
I think the fan base will take care of that for you.
Okay, I don't know about that. Famous last words as we started to close down the other podcast on Friday, right? Probably not somewhere within there. I said kind of unlikely that we'll have a announcement on the head coach over the weekend. But I did think I ended the podcast said we'll see you on Monday, except if except if they do hire a new head coach. Smiles, everyone, smiles. I feel like Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island here, trying to get people pumped up.
It's only a reference Mike McCarthy might get.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I don't even think you were alive to see the original runnings of Fantasy Island. Look, I mean, obviously, I think around the fan base, this is going to be met with displeasure, dissatisfaction, whatever word you want to use there. I certainly was hoping that the team would not go this direction. I was hoping for a Shula or a Shieldhouse or even an Anthony Weaver. Now that we had, the list had gotten whittled down a little bit. It's not hard, obviously, to draw the dots and connect the dots of why Mike McCarthy is their choice. Pittsburgh guy, has links to obviously Omar Khan and Andy Weidel dating back to 2000 with the time in New Orleans, and an experienced head coach. And if you play into the fact that Art Rooney said not too long ago that he doesn't like the word rebuild or doesn't figure this as a rebuild, kind of lends its hand into having an experienced head coach at this time. But the thing is that Mike McCarthy is 62, going to be 63, I believe, in November. This is a 5-year contract, as is the case with most head coaches with their initial deals. How much longer is he going to coach? I would say 10 years at max if things go absolutely perfect over the next several years in Pittsburgh. Realistically, it could be 5 and done. If he goes a little farther than that, perhaps maybe even 7 are done. I suppose he tried to, according to and jump in here anytime you feel like it. According to Ed Werder, who covered obviously McCarthy during his time with the Cowboys, he says one of the elements that Mike McCarthy provided the Titans and Steelers when he interviewed with them were videos and graphics of his long history of coaching and developing quarterbacks, beginning with Joe Montana with the Chiefs and under Marty Schottenheimer. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, when Joe Montana got to the Chiefs, Joe Montana was already
he was already Joe Montana.
Yeah, this one I didn't miss another Joe Montana in here, right? And you and I had that conversation. I think you even put out on Twitter the other day. Can somebody point me into in the direction of actual quarterbacks that maybe Mike McCarthy has developed And look, they have Will Howard obviously under contract at this time. Mason Rudolph's been under contract and been around the NFL for a while. Barring this team finding, going maybe let's say a Ty Simpson in the draft, or going out and getting Malik Willis in free agency. It's also logical to think that for the first for the thought in your head to jump into there about the fact of Aaron Rodgers coming back for one more seasons. I hope to God this just isn't, let's get Aaron back and try to make one last run at this thing type of scenario. But I wasn't convinced that Mike McCarthy would have been the head coach at this time now at this go around, but here we are. So your turn.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is enthused by this hire, and I have a couple questions about the process, but I think the starting point is going to be why Pittsburgh hired Mike McCarthy, and I wrote an article right after the hire was made explaining why, and no one has to agree with it or like it, and I would fall in that camp either. This is certainly not my first choice or second choice or probably not even the third choice, but why is McCarthy the hire? I think there's three clear reasons, and mostly ones that you outlined. A, or Rooney does not want to rebuild. He doesn't believe in that approach. He wants somebody who can turn around this team and win now, and a veteran who's not learning on the job and going through those growing pains. And McCarthy, in all fairness to him, can be that guy. In Dallas, he turned things around really quickly. He had 3 straight 12-win seasons. When he got to Green Bay in 06, that was a 4-win team. 2 years later, they're 13-3 and winning the NFC North. And so he's able to kind of have these quick turnarounds, and a guy that has had at least regular season success. Postseason, especially recently, a different story. They wanted an offensive mind to develop and find that next franchise quarterback, and that may not come this year, but hopefully no later than the 2027 NFL draft. And I think McCarthy's a guy that can work with quarterbacks. It's very much in his background. And so if McCarthy can do at least that, then that's probably a good hire in itself. If he can find that quarterback of the future and develop him, then there may be a legacy that extends beyond his time coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, as you said, the synergy between McCarthy and Omar Khan, and should he stay and not go to Atlanta, Andy Weidel from their time in New Orleans together, guys that are on the same page, guys that know each other. And of course, McCarthy being a Pittsburgh kid, a Greenfield native, I'm sure helps as well.
Does this, at least in your head, signal that they think that they can compete for a championship now in the next 2 years? Or I mean, even starting as early as 2026?
Well, again, what I think it goes back to is Rooney, his definition of competing. And while, of course, he wants to win the Super Bowl, that's always going to be the ultimate goal. What he really values the most is being in the hunt and being playoff viable. He's repeatedly said that about Mike Tomlin and why he stuck by Mike Tomlin. And I think everyone focuses on they never had a losing season. I think what Rooney liked more, maybe even subconsciously, was that Pittsburgh only played one game in Tomlin's entire tenure in which they were eliminated from postseason contention. So they were always literally in the hunt. I'm not saying that's the right metric. We're not hanging banners for it, but that is Rooney's, I think, definition of competing. And I think his thought is, under McCarthy, Pittsburgh can still stay afloat and be at least that competitive.
So in other words, win more games than you lose, and at its core, the fan base can't be pissed off, right?
No, it's not about the fan base being pissed off. They'll be pissed off, but will Rooney be happy or content with that?
Yeah, I mean, it sells tickets too, right?
Well, I think the frustration is going to continue to mount, and that may be more of a struggle. But again, I just think that's what Rooney is. I'm not saying he doesn't care about winning a Super Bowl. Of course he does, but I think he likes to compete. He doesn't want to be a team that's 5 wins and gets completely is playing a bunch of meaningless games in December. Again, I'm not saying that's the right approach, but I'm just saying I think that's what the thought process is based on all the available evidence and all the things Rooney himself has said.
How much do you think the factor of kind of leaning towards a veteran team, not I mean, if you look at the offensive side of football, obviously that's not the case unless you bring back Aaron Rodgers and make him part of it. But defensive side of football, a lot of questions about Cam Hayward. Obviously, T.J. Watt getting up there. Highsmiths have been in this league for a couple of years now. Jalen Ramsey, we'll see what happens to him. Do you think more on the side of the defense and having veteran players like that uh, led to a more veteran coach as opposed to, let's say, a first timer?
To an extent, I think that's probably valid to some maybe smaller degree. This is going to be a pretty youthful team soon with a dozen draft picks coming up. Let's assume they even trade a couple picks and bring in 10 rookies and maybe sign some younger free agents. It'll be a younger roster, I think, in short order as the defense ages out. By next year, it could be regarded as a really young team, probably in a lot of ways, as Cam Hayward's probably done no later than uh, after this year if he comes back at all, and Watt gets older, and Ramsey's probably gone. If not this year, then next. And so it's going to probably become a really rookie-laden roster or young roster very soon.
How would you explain Mike McCarthy coming and going so quickly in Dallas?
Well, he was there for what, 5 seasons? I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that's like super quick. It was just full contract that he fulfilled, and he got in that lame duck status. And they tried to bring, I think, McCarthy back. There were at least talks with Jerry Jones after the 24 season. They just couldn't come to an agreement. I don't know exactly what happened there. I'll have to research that a little bit more, but I believe that's the gist of how all that went down. But yeah, the last year was really bad. He went into a lame duck season. It was kind of make or break. Jerry Jones talked about like this: we're putting all our chips in, and they went 7-10. Prescott
Right.
got hurt, and that's kind of all she wrote there.
All right. And he obviously had a good quarterback for a lot of time there with Dak Prescott there.
What are your thoughts on his ability to develop a quarterback, which is, I think, a big reason why Pittsburgh is tabbing McCarthy?
Well, once again, I think it goes back to, I mean, can you show me a viable list of guys that he's actually taken from the start, you know?
Yeah, Rodgers is the big one, and that is nothing to sneeze at. I think Rodgers would have succeeded with a lot of coaches just because of his pure talent, but McCarthy should be credited for that. I think his resume is actually stronger with some of these older quarterbacks he's sort of revived and pieced together and kind of brought back, be it, I mentioned Steve Bono the other day, Rich Gannon, kind of his late Kansas City years, and then transitioning to the Raiders. I mean, Montana, obviously, McCarthy did not create Joe Montana, but he had missed the 91 season with an elbow injury, barely played in 92, and then 93 made the Pro Bowl, so at 37 years old. And so there was a second act to at least Montana's career in Kansas City. So I think McCarthy, even though I think it was quality control, so it's not like he was the leader of that offense or anything. So I can kind of see that. He did further the careers of Dak Prescott. Dak's had some of his best seasons individually, production-wise, under Mike McCarthy. And McCarthy's offenses are generally good. In Dallas, they were a high-flying offense. And so I think Pittsburgh wants something new, and they believe that Pittsburgh can finally have an offense under Mike McCarthy. Got to get the quarterback, and that's to be determined, but that's the idea.
And when he was in with the Saints, who was the quarterbacks and all there?
Aaron Brooks was the main guy, and his career really kind of ended once McCarthy left, take the 49ers OC job in 05. Brooks was not a great quarterback. He was fairly athletic, pretty inconsistent, maybe a little Cordell Stewart-like. Somebody can check me on that who might remember that time a bit better, but Brooks was the main quarterback. It was not Drew Brees, by the way, for anyone wondering. It was not Brees' time.
And Jake Delhomme was there. Was that before Jake? Let's see,
Jake Delhomme?
Delhomme, yeah. When did he? He was he ended up with the Panthers a couple years later, obviously. So that was
I didn't realize that.
That was the early Jake Delhomme entered the NFL in 1997, I think, originally, and I think wasn't he the backup for the Saints in 2000?
It looks like he was a backup in New Orleans in 99. There were maybe some lost seasons in there. I don't know his whole arc, but it wasn't until Carolina that he became a full-time starter. But
Right.
maybe there's credit for McCarthy helping to develop him to be prepared to become the starter.
Yeah, I'm looking when Delhomme was with the Saints, 97 to 2002. So that was his time there before going over to the Panthers in 2003. All right, now we start trying to connect the dots of what maybe a coaching staff will potentially look like. Might be a happy day for maybe Scott McCurley can stop the moving trucks, right?
If there's one coach that's probably really safe right now, it would be Scott McCurley. So obviously the coaching staff in Pittsburgh is going to see a good amount of upheaval. That's natural for any new head coach that comes in. But McCurley and McCarthy are two peas in a pod, right down to the Mick part of their last names. McCurley has spent his entire career until 2025 with Mike McCarthy. McCarthy hired him in 2006 as a unknown guy at Pitt. When McCarthy was hired by Green Bay, McCarthy was there the entire tenure of Mike McCarthy. Was in fact even fired reportedly at one time and then brought back after the 2017 season. And then when McCarthy took the job in 2020, he hired McCarthy as the inside linebackers coach in 2019. McCarthy turned down the LSU job as an analyst to stay with McCarthy and be unemployed. And they had kind of what they called the McCarthy Project, which was them studying tape and researching and meeting weekly to go over trends of the NFL to be ready for the next job. And so a lot of ties there. And so I fully expect McCarthy, who should be under contract through 2026, to stay on Pittsburgh staff.
That wouldn't make a lot of sense due to history. Hey, maybe the Steelers get them a Cignetti, Alex.
Just not the one that you ordered. It might be Frank Cignetti Jr. And I'll have a post on this in the morning. I'll rattle off some names, and I've done this under kind of a quick review of connections for all the candidates. And so this list is subject to change and grow and expand and subtract. But yeah, Frank Cignetti Jr., obviously Pittsburgh guy. He is the current OC for IUP, D2 school, the Crimson Hawks. He's coaching the NFL for a long time. And I got to research the connections a bit more. But in 2019, as part of that McCarthy project, the coaches who stuck with McCarthy and kind of helped him, it was Scott McCurley, it was Jim Haslett, it was Frank Cignetti Jr., all Pittsburgh kids. So very much ties that bind there. Could that be the OC? I was looking, very brief research. McCarthy only had to make one OC hire in Dallas. He promoted Brian Schottenheimer, who ultimately replaced him as head coach. Whenever he arrived, Kellen Moore was there and stayed as the OC. So I want to research kind of McCarthy's history. Could he go for a younger guy to kind of mentor, perhaps? But we'll see. Could it also be Tom Arth? Tom Arth played for Mike McCarthy in 2006, went to the quarterback camp alongside Aaron Rodgers. I would have a pretty good guess that Arth will stay on staff at the least as the quarterback's coach.
All right, I've been flying down the rabbit hole as well, too. A couple other guys that have connections. Could Al Harris potentially be the defensive coordinator with Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh?
And explain why that connection makes sense.
Obviously goes back to time with the Packers, and Al Harris was also on the staff with Dallas, and Al Harris now is in Chicago as like he's not a defensive coordinator, but I think Al Harris has been getting some looks around the league as defensive coordinator. He's kind of in that next tier of future head coaches that probably need to stamp a defensive coordinator on them next. So because of the link and the connection and all to Al Harris, I would not be shocked if maybe that winds up being the case.
Yeah, I think that's a strong name to consider for DC. Harris has gotten D coordinator interest this cycle. And you could certainly see the allure of him now following McCarthy to Pittsburgh. Again, this is my list of names, and I don't even entirely remember why I wrote all these names down. So I'm kind of doing this a little seat of my pants here. And these are not endorsements by me. This is me just playing connection.
Oh, yeah, they are.
People will interpret
just
it
like
that way.
you endorsed Mike McCarthy to be the head coach. Everybody knows you were rooting for that. Get him, boys.
Jeff Hafley not looking so bad right now, isn't he?
Oh,
I think little Hafley in your life would have been better than Mike McCarthy for the fan base. Some other names is DC that I've just jotted down. Again, connection game. Patrick Graham, who I actually really like, and interviewed for the DC job in 22 whenever Keith Butler retired, stepped down, whenever that situation ended. And I think Graham has gotten a couple head coach looks. I think that was honestly Rooney Rule related stuff there. But
he's got looks in Pittsburgh before too by Tomlin, right?
But that's what I just said. Yeah, in 2022, when Butler retired, it was Graham, Austin, and Chris Richard, or Richard, however you say it, that interviewed for the DC job, went to Austin. Of course, Graham obviously was the Raiders DC last year, bad defense, but there was not much talent there, so I don't really put that against Graham. Joe Witt Jr., who I know was just fired by Dan Quinn, would not be an inspiring name, but there's a connection somewhere apparently there. OC names are just running down a list here. Again, all subject to change. This is not a super impressive list. Ben McAdoo, Joe Philbin. If you want younger, up-and-comer, Steve Shimko, Scott Tolzien, the quarterback's coach in Dallas.
I put that on Twitter an hour ago there. Yeah.
Okay. And then just some other assistants potentially. And again, I don't remember exactly why they're all here, but they're all connected to McCarthy in some form or fashion. Robert Prince, John Fossil, Princeby for receivers, Fossil special teams, James Campen as a new O-line coach, and Chris Grizzy as strength and conditioning was my list.
All right. I also the first names that jumped to mind that I put out there was Al Harris, probably going to get looks or could be potentially be a candidate for defensive coordinator. Scott Tolzien has a connection to McCarthy. Now Tolzien right now, if he wouldn't be the offensive coordinator, would it be much of a promotion for him to make the move? Because Tolzien right now is with the Saints and he's a quarterback's coach. So unless you made him the offensive coordinator and unless he was allowed to make a lateral move or whatnot, which probably wouldn't be the case. Now, Tolzien obviously is a former quarterback, so and he would be a kind of an intermediate bridge of not being out of the game too long to help you kind of tutor a new quarterback along those lines. In fact, Tolzien, I think, is only 38, going to be 39 in September there. So that's one that initially jumped out to me as a potential OC. And look, obviously, Mike McCarthy is going to have a big hand in the offense. The other one that jumped out to me is Alex Van Pelt. Come on down. There's a huge connection between him, Mike McCarthy, and obviously the city of Pittsburgh as well too, because Alex Van Pelt played his college football in at Pitt, right? And then didn't he even during a preseason or his first rookie season? Wasn't he with the Steelers as well?
I believe he was drafted by the Steelers.
All right.
Correct? I mean, you tell me, but correct. I believe he was drafted by Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yes, 8th round, 93.
Yeah, that was back when the drafts went longer.
So yeah, that could also make sense. He's been an OC before, not incredibly successful, but an OC.
Luke Getsy's another one that has connections and to not only McCarthy but Pittsburgh.
Yeah, again, these are all good suggestions there. I think Tolzien's got a real good shot. The only question would be under a offensive-minded coach, would he want to wait to maybe go to a defensive-minded coach where he could really run the offense? But Tolzien played for Mike McCarthy, coached for Mike McCarthy, did a good job with Shuck last year in New Orleans, and so that would be probably a hot name as OC.
Okay. Anybody else that you've been able to connect? If you brought in, is Joe Philbin still coaching, and could that be an offensive line coach guy?
Let me try to look it up here on the fly, his whole background. Yeah, he's coached offensive line in 2024. I don't know how great of a job he did with the Raiders. He was the O-line coach in Dallas under McCarthy, so that is a O-line, OC, something like that. Potentially, again, just spitballing some names here. I think Pelissero just said Patrick Graham, too, is a name to watch for defensive coordinator, so I would like that. If you could get Tolzien, and I got to do research more on these guys, obviously, we all do, but Tolzien as the OC, Graham as the DC, those are two pretty strong hires, I'd bet.
Okay. What else is there to discuss related to all this now?
Well, just to go back to Aaron Rodgers, the reporting is, and I think this is valid and sincere whenever it comes out, that McCarthy was not hired to bring back Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Pittsburgh is that short-sighted to think about just and only this year. But it's a reality. If there was a lane for and a door to open for Rodgers to return, it would be for Mike McCarthy. And so what do you think this does to Rodgers' chances of returning?
It certainly doesn't hurt them. I just worry about the familiarity aspect in there, and could you have a little bit of the tail wagging the dog if he was to return here and knows how to push all McCarthy's buttons, and it just. Now, look, he obviously was already there. He left such a good, Aaron Rodgers left a good impression on his teammates. I think the offensive line would probably wouldn't mind another year of Aaron Rodgers, I would imagine. And Adam Thielen, Adam Thielen, even though he's technically is retired, has said that he would consider maybe playing another year if Aaron Rodgers comes back. Now, the interesting aspect is this happening on a Saturday. I believe Adam Thielen is supposed to be on NFL Network pregame on Sunday. So you can bet Sunday there's going to be a lot of Steelers and Mike McCarthy talk. And I imagine I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Aaron Rodgers' name is brought up about his potential of returning to Pittsburgh sometime during the pregame shows on Sunday there as well too. Um, wh- I, I don't get very excited about it, Alex. Overall, I mean, if anything, I think it would be good for a younger quarterback for Will Howard to have Aaron Rodgers around there for a second year, and potentially maybe you can lean into that at some point. If Aaron Rodgers was to return, I would hope it would be under the understanding and the salary amount that, look, if things go south right out of the start here, we're gonna pull the plug on you, buddy. And potentially get Will Howard in there to get a longer look on him. Now, look, the thing is, if Aaron Rodgers comes back and decides to sign, there's no quarterback court competition. There's nothing. Aaron Rodgers is going to be your starter until either he gets hurt or he's has the Steelers out of the playoffs. I think at that point there, I would understand why they would do it just from we think we can compete. We've got Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. If we make a few adjustments here and there in free agency, have a good draft, we can maybe potentially go further than one and done in the playoffs. I'm not personally, do I think that's personally what I think we're staring at if Aaron Rodgers does come back right now is 9-8, 10 or 10-7, make the playoffs, one and done.
And that's
20
best case scenario to me, at least as we sit
Yeah,
here today. I mean, this team could still flatline and go,
yeah.
6-11.
21st pick in the draft in 2027. Uh, babe, I got you, babe. Groundhog, the music
Okay.
when the radio comes on in Groundhog. Isn't that the song
Sure. I don't
that
know.
plays in the movie Groundhog Day? But uh, it's hard to get overly excited about this. Now, look, if they lean into Will Howard for whatever reason this year, and at least see what he has with Mike McCarthy, under his tutelage there, or per se, they trade for a Mac Jones, or they go after a Malik Willis in free agency. Maybe his obviously experience working with quarterbacks might come into play, might be something a little to get excited about here. But I mean, is other than us taking a deep dive at Ty Simpson and potentially Trinidad Chambliss, who is there to get excited about in the draft that you're going to lean into that's going to give you a chance to be competitive and make the playoffs in 2026? I'm just not seeing it. That's why I was hoping that this team would have gone kind of the same route they've gone previously with head coaches, go younger, you know, that way so they could kind of grow with that coach and move forward. And it goes without saying, Mike McCarthy's not going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach for 15 years, right?
Right. Yeah, it's very clear the intent is not to do this whole rebuild long-term plan. And so that, I think, would lead credence to Rodgers fitting and Pittsburgh wanting him back in this maybe thought of trying to win now. Now, again, Rodgers has to want to come back. And just because McCarthy got hired doesn't mean Rodgers is going to jump at the
Right.
chance and come back. He may sit there and say, that's awesome. McCarthy would have been, or is the head coach. If I wanted to play again, then I probably would have come back and signed with Pittsburgh again. But I just don't have the desire to play football again, and I'm done. That's kind of where this thing was trending at the end of the season when we still thought Tomlin was going to return, and we know that Rodgers loves Tomlin and would have played for Tomlin. So the same calculus may be that even if there's still good relationship with him and McCarthy, that's been in some dispute. I think it's probably good enough to make it work and for Rodgers to want to come back, but he may just not want to come back just because he's done playing football.
And people will point to, well, look what's happened to Andy Reid in his post-Philadelphia years. Well, Andy Reid also has had uh, uh, Mahomes and Kelsey as well, right?
And he was 55 when he started his second act in Kansas City. So he was, 7 years younger or so. I think the worst, not the worst, but one of the negative, we're on that Aaron Rodgers watch for the next 3 months now, where it's will he, won't he, 74 analysts a day talking about it. So I kind of just hate that on the surface.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, obviously in the wild fact, look, can Mike McCarthy win games in the NFL at this point? Yes. The answer
sure,
is yes.
sure. He's proven that.
He has done that. The thing is here is, and regardless who the coach, who the head coach ended up being here, it's what are you going to do at quarterback, right? And none of that's been answered still at this point. Now, it will be, if the media was smart on Monday or Tuesday, whenever the introductory press conference they're going to hammer Mike McCarthy hard about Aaron Rodgers. Just get it on out there and hammer it. And of course McCarthy's going to say, well, we don't we don't even know if Aaron Rodgers wants to play, but I would at least paint him in the corner that if Aaron Rodgers was open to playing one more year, would you be open to having Aaron Rodgers here? I'd try to at least paint him down and nail him down that way. You see what I'm saying? And
Sure.
you could ask that question 2 or 3 times if he tries to sidestep it. And look, his first press conference, he's going to try to endear himself as much as possible, even though this is old hand to him and dealing with the media and all like that. But he's going to try to he's going to try to answer a lot of questions, I think, as honestly as possible right out of the chute here. So I would try to pin him down on that, and I would try to pin him down too about what his thoughts on, and this might not happen right away. What are his thoughts on the 2026 quarterback draft class, and what is his thoughts on Will Howard coming out of Ohio State as well too? So this team is not going to win anything without a quarterback, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb there, and I don't think that's a surprising declaration. And it was still something that was going to have to be asked, who, like I said, regardless of who this head coach is. But the thing is how excited are people going to be if it does end up being Aaron Rodgers running it back for 1 and God forbid even 2 more years?
Yeah, the enthusiasm level is not going to be high on that. I think that's been made clear. But if you win, fans will love you. It's all if McCarthy goes out there and wins, then people will love the hire. If you can find the quarterback, people will love the hire. It's all results based. There's been a lot of head coaches that have been hired, and the fans love it and think it's a home run hire, and it's been a complete disaster. And the inverse, I'm sure, has been true as well. Nick Sirianni was panned pretty heavily during a kind of disaster opening press conference, and while Eagle fans probably have mixed feelings about him, it's been a pretty good hire, I would say, overall. Probably should have mentioned this point earlier. One real frustrating thing I have about this process, not even just the hire itself, but the process. Why not wait to speak to the Rams assistants
I don't get that.
Coming week? Chris Shula, Nathan Shelash, you couldn't talk to them this week. That window will open starting on Monday, win or lose for the Rams. There was no competition for Mike McCarthy. No one else was going after this guy. Tennessee interviewed him. They hired Robert Saleh. I don't believe McCarthy had any other known interviews elsewhere. And the reporting was, this may have been some Asian spin, but the McCarthy was pulling himself out of all of the other opportunities focused really solely on Pittsburgh. And so there was no rush. There was no fear. If this was Anthony Weaver, you might sit there and say, well, Arizona's taking a second look at him. Buffalo showing interest. Let's go get this guy now. You could have waited until Wednesday, brought in at least one of those Rams guys, preferably Shula, but also Shieldhouse, talked to them and had the whole picture before making the hire. And I thought that would be Pittsburgh's plan. That was my expectation. And obviously it's going in a different direction. So I just don't understand, why would you rush this and not talk to those guys in person? I can't understand that part.
Did Mike McCarthy do one hell of a used car salesman job on him? And 2001 put together AOL graphics or what?
Which then one heck of a PowerPoint. So
yeah, a PowerPoint. I don't understand that. And what Jerry Dulac reported a week ago that what was the title of the Dulac post?
0% chance they would hire a retread former head coach.
All right. Well, that should have been a signal that we were headed towards Mike McCarthy right there. And uh, look, it just it felt like an opportunity to go younger here, and I don't know why they wouldn't have, at least like you said, if there's not a lot of competition. What does it hurt you at that point?
Mm.
Unless Shula and Shieldhouse, unequivocally didn't want to come, or don't feel they're ready or something like that. Where do those two wind up now at this point? Raiders, or do they even go anywhere? It lacks sexiness. It lacks everything with going with the McCarthy hire here.
Yeah, that's the part I have trouble getting my head around without Pittsburgh doing their due diligence and a real careful process, which is kind of what we thought would be. And I'm sure they went through the process, but they only interviewed 3 people in person. That's all they ever got to was Flores, Weaver, and McCarthy. And I don't know what it's like for the rest of the NFL. Miami's might have been pretty quick. Obviously, the Giants zeroed in on Harbaugh right away, but probably not a lot of in-person interviews out there. I mean, 2 of them were to satisfy the Rooney rule, so you had to interview at least 2 minority candidates, which they did in Flores and Weaver and McCarthy. It's a really quick process, it feels like, and that part I'm struggling with. I mean, if they'd interviewed the whole batch and still hired McCarthy, you would have had a similar reaction, but I think that's an extra add-on to this search of why did it feel so hurried and rushed? What was the urgency to do this right now? I know you want to hire your coaching staff, as soon as possible to get him in place, to hire the assistants, but it did not need to happen today.
No, no. Um, what is the expectations now from the Rooneys with Mike McCarthy? From Rooney with Mike McCarthy?
What are expectations, you said?
Yeah, within 5 years, it's to win a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's always expectation when you hire a head coach, but for Pittsburgh's standpoint, the expectation is to win, to not go through the rebuild, and to find the franchise quarterback this year or next. Those are the 2 main goals.
All right. What are reasonable expectations from where you sit right now with this 2016?
That at best,
2026. Did I say 2006 or two?
I
It
think,
feels like I'm in 2006.
yeah,
2016.
it's probably best case where it's been to be playoff competitive in the hunt until the end, 9-8, 10-7. Worst case, it flops, and you probably get a 5-6 win season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it could have a larger boom or bust. In other words, a spread, like you
I don't
said.
know how big the boom is, though. You say
Yeah.
boom or bust. The
Well,
bust.
I phrased that wrong. Floor and ceiling.
Yeah, it's kind of a.
It feels like the win total could potentially be 10 at most.
It
And
feels like low ceiling, high, or low ceiling, and I guess low floor. It would be not
yeah,
high floor.
low
Low floor,
ceiling.
low ceiling.
Yeah, 6 wins, 5 wins potentially. And that would please a lot of people because at the very least, you're going to be up in the draft, in the 2027 draft, and make potentially a run at one of those quarterbacks there. But this is, it goes without saying, people listening to this would be absolutely livid with us if we were in on this singing the praises of this hire. I think we made it clear that McCarthy was not high on our list prior to this happening. And look, I mean, I don't hate Mike. People are going to take away that from this, probably that Dave and Alex hate Mike McCarthy. No, I like Mike McCarthy as a person. Overall, I think he has done some good stuff in the NFL. I just don't think this is the right hire right now for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm in agreement with you. He'll be given a chance and a fair shake, and he should get that. And if he can make this team a winner, if he can find that quarterback of the future, and really kind of going through the list of quarterback names, there actually is. I mean, there's a pretty decent list of names that he's worked with. Now, maybe they're not all stars, and maybe some of them have been a little bit older in their career, but I think there's a track record that says this guy can work with quarterbacks. And so I asked that question on Twitter, a little pointed, but a little more open-ended, to learn some more about his background and maybe some names that I had been missing. So, Delhomme, I didn't realize that Delhomme was a Saint as a backup for a time and kind of got his early development under Mike McCarthy. So those things are worth mentioning. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you? How happy are you of this hire? Of course, 10 being the happiest.
I'm a 4.
Yeah, I'm like 3.5 is probably my number. I know most people would just say 1 or try to go negative on the scale, but there are some upsides. I can see the line of thinking. Do I agree with it? No, but we'll see how it goes.
I understand why they did it, obviously, but that mean I gotta like it, and I do think it's kind of we've already named once again a couple of names that it would be shocking if a couple of the guys that we just named off on the dot connecting aren't part of the staff moving forward. So it will be interesting to see McCurley and Arth and maybe a few others who potentially stick around because of this. How crazy would it be if Arth was the OC? And I think you even kind of broached that topic if McCarthy was ultimately named the head coach back a few days ago, right?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. Is he going to be the leader? I'm not sure about that, but I think at the least there's a good chance he stays on as quarterback coach. Now his contract was expiring, so he'll have to sign a new deal. That's not McCurley can just be he's under contract. Okay, you stay. Don't have to do anything with the contract. I think Arth could get a look, but I think also Tolzien, some of the names we mentioned, also have very viable chances and paths.
How would you best describe McCarthy's offense that he likes to run?
I need to probably dip into that a bit more, but obviously it's a much more open offense compared to Arthur Smith. You're going to see a lot more 11 personnel, more vertical passing game. You're going to see a more attacking, aggressive defense or offense. It's not the run centric approach. But I have to kind of get into that tree a little bit more. Where would the tree come from, Mike McCarthy? What is kind of his roots or his mentors?
Doesn't it go back to, well, let's see.
I mean, Schottenheimer, Marty.
All right.
I'm just looking at PFR, worked for Jim Haslett, Mike Nolan, Ray Rhodes, Marty Schottenheimer are the 4 listed there.
We'll have to go down kind of what his what his upbringings were in totality, right? To who does he get connected back to?
Yeah, but that
The
first mentor is
easiest,
Marty Schottenheimer from the
right?
time in KC.
And then obviously that was described as Marty ball, right? Where a lot of running the football and playing good defense, right?
Yeah. And just to kind of a different track with McCarthy, one of the problems I have is that he couldn't get over the hump those final years. In some ways it's Tomlin-like because a great regular season record. Teams were largely always competitive, but just that one Super Bowl run back in 2010, of course, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. So talk about things coming full circle now hoping McCarthy can somehow lead Pittsburgh to a Super Bowl, but he has 1 playoff win since 2017, and Pittsburgh has 0 since 2017. It's a match made in heaven for all the wrong reasons, I feel like.
Uh-huh.
You had 3 straight 12-5 seasons. You couldn't get over the hump. Made it never as far as the divisional round. Some really disappointing losses. Upset by Green Bay. Lost to San Francisco. You're just worried you're kind of in that same trap.
It's like that guy with that plaid shirt that gets another identical plaid shirt for Christmas, right?
Yes, although I will say, like to a man in terms of their background and philosophy, Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin are pretty different people.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
I understand the overall point of their resume, but in terms of how they work and how they act and what's their upbringing, it's probably hard to find 2 different people than Mike Tomlin and Mike McCarthy.
All right. What are we working on for the site for the rest of the weekend? With obviously there's going to be a lot of news fallout opinions about Mike McCarthy. Already is at this point. The shows, the network shows will be focused on it, I'm sure, on Sunday pregame and then on into next week. We're waiting to hear when the actual press conference is going to be. You would think it'd be Monday or Tuesday, right, ahead of the Senior Bowl getting underway.
That would be my thought, or they would have to delay it to the Monday after. But we'll assume and believe Monday, but nothing's been reported. The team will announce it, so we'll let you know.
All right. Any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just I'm surprised at the timing. I am really surprised that it came. I'm more surprised it happened today than I am surprised that it was Mike McCarthy, to be honest with you, because I thought I thought Pittsburgh would let the search play out and kind of do due diligence and check all the boxes, but they felt strongly about it, and so the deal is basically done. Yeah, for the site, for the AM, I'll have a coaching staff list, really kind of going through the names I talked about. add, subtract a couple when I do kind of some more research. Have any current players reacted to the McCarthy news? I have not had a chance to check social
I
media.
have not checked, but I will as soon as I get get off of here and get this all published. Let's see. That means Art Rooney will be what, 79 when McCarthy's 5 years is up in Pittsburgh.
That sounds about right. So we'll see who stays in their role longer, I guess, McCarthy or Art.
All right. In the meantime, we will be back on Monday talking about more about Mike McCarthy being the Steelers' next new head coach, talking about the conference championship games that take place on Sunday. Senior Bowl be getting underway soon. Our people at the Shrine Bowl are doing great work. You can find all their work on the site right now. And in between all that, there's going to be a ton of network and major media and local media response on the Mike McCarthy stuff that we'll keep the site updated on that as well too. So you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. So until Monday, hang in there, everybody. Smiles. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.